Tequila to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. I'm ready to talk about this training camp battle that could be absolutely pivotal to the 49ers defensive success and what happens along that defensive line for the 49ers in 2023. It's one of the big question marks going into training camp. Who is going to be playing defensive end opposite of Nick Bosa? Of course, the 49ers lose Samson Ebukam in free agency. He goes and gets big money. Charles Omenihu goes and gets big money. Jordan Willis switches over to the Las Vegas Raiders. And all of a sudden, you have a little bit of a void at the defensive end position. The 49ers have found a couple of different ways to address what potentially could be a hole in their starting lineup. Of course, they drafted Drake Jackson at pick 61 of the 2022 NFL draft. And Drake Jackson had a pretty good rookie season. But they didn't just stop there. They went out and they signed Clelin Ferrell, a former first-round pick and a number 4 overall pick of the Las Vegas Raiders. And he comes over along with former teammate from Clemson, Austin Bryant. They bring back Kerry Hyder. They draft Robert Beal Jr. out of Georgia. And these are the guys now that are in line to compete for a starting job for the San Francisco 49ers defensive line that is absolutely stacked at the other 3 starting spots. Bosa, who we talked about, Javon Hargrave, comes over from Philadelphia, is an absolute monster in the interior. And then Eric Armstead, who, when he has good players around him, plays at a extremely high level. 10 sacks in 2019. Most of 2022 marred by injury. They just couldn't get on the field. When he did, he made an impact. And down the stretch and into the playoffs, Eric Armstead was an absolute beast. And I fully expect Armstead to continue that way this season. So I'm excited about Armstead, Hargrave, and Bosa. But we now have a really good matchup in training camp to see who starts opposite of Bosa. We have, of course, Drake Jackson and Clelin Ferrell. And I think these are the 2 most obvious choices to start at defensive end. Coach Chris Cassera could always end up going with a Robert Beal or maybe somebody he feels comfortable with, like Kerry Hyder, considering Hyder started some games for him in 2020. But I think these 2 guys have the most ability to make an impact on the 49ers defensive line. Because what these guys have to do is they have to be able to take advantage of one-on-one situations. The offensive lines are going to want to double-team Nick Bosa and double-team Javon Hargrave. So what has to happen is Eric Armstead needs to win one-on-one situations, which I believe he will more times than he won't. But then also you have to have somebody that can win on the opposite side and still be able to set the edge against the run. So many times Samson Ebukam, Charles Omenihu, Jordan Willis would get singled up situations against offensive tackles, and they had to win, but they didn't always get that done. Samson Ebukam's 5 sacks, yes, pretty good, but for a starting defensive end opposite of Nick Bosa, you got to hope that nears more double digits. Getting that production from that defensive end will take your defensive line and overall defense to another level. Just making it so a quarterback goes back to closer to 3 seconds per attempt than the 4 seconds, which you sometimes see when you don't have those 4 really good pass rushers. And, of course, the 49ers can go with a variety of different personnel groupings to be able to get the best pass rushers out there. But you have to have defensive ends that can do it on all 3 downs. The question marks around Drake Jackson winning this starting job have more to do with his consistency. He played 351 snaps in his rookie season for the 49ers, including being inactive for most of the games down the stretch. He got 3 sacks during the season, which is great, and he looked good at times. The problem was those sacks weren't because of his athletic ability or because of his bend or because of his great technical abilities. Those things were all developing. It was because of hustle, which is important. He also had a lot of batted balls as well. but we need that next step to take this defensive line to another level. He needs to prove that he's gotten so much better at the technical parts of playing an edge rusher in the 49ers wide nine. He has to be able to bend the corner. He has to be able to use his long arm to be able to get offensive tackles moving. He has to create a little bit of a gap for his interior defensive lineman to be able to work. All the while doing those things against the pass, he has to be able to set the edge against the run. By setting the edge, you make sure that you keep that jam down and don't allow any space for an opposing offense to be able to run the football off tackle. By setting the edge as well, you got to keep that outside arm free and make sure no running back or quarterback gets around the outside. It's about that contain and also locking it down so nobody kicks you out, because that's what offenses want to do. They want to get movement on the edge. If they can kick you out, they can run inside. If they can hook you, they can run outside. If a quarterback can escape the pocket, he can be absolutely dangerous. So that's something that Drake Jackson has to prove that he can do. He's done all the things in the offseason that you would expect a player of his ability to get better at. He's gotten stronger, 13 pounds of muscle, all the while not losing any speed. He looks different. He's talking about how much he lifts now. It's a different animal for Drake Jackson. Chris Kasarik talked about the fact he never had to wonder if Drake Jackson was going to be in the gym this offseason. He was there every single day. The fact that he did that gives us a lot of hope and promise for what Drake Jackson can provide this 49ers team. Because let's be honest, as far as physical gifts, he's the most talented defensive end the 49ers have to play opposite of Bosa that's not named Robert Beal. Those two guys are at a different level as far as athletic ability compared to the guys behind him. So one of those two guys being successful is important. Drake is definitely ahead of the game. Now, when it comes to Clelin Ferrell, Ferrell went from having a really good rookie season with the Raiders, where he had 4.5 sacks. He played a lot of snaps. He played over 600 snaps in that season. And he had a really big impact. To seeing that slowly fade away as he played less snaps, got less opportunities, started less games. So he started to fall out of favor with that organization and how they wanted to go with a defensive line. We've seen this happen before. Arden Key was a player that played for the Raiders and struggled in the 2 years that he was there with the Raiders. He did not have the huge impact that he was expected to have being a second-round pick coming out of college. Yet when he got to the 49ers and he started playing for Coach Chris Kasarik, guess what? 6.5 sacks for Arden Key. Next thing you know, he's getting a big-time contract from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because sometimes it comes down to system fit. Having a certain set of skills is great, but it doesn't translate to every single defensive scheme you're going to be playing in. When it comes to Chris Kasarik, he knows which players to target and which players fit his scheme. It's not cookie cutter. You don't all have to be fast. You don't all have to be strong. You don't all have to have a certain length of arm. But it's exactly something he sees in the way that he could use them within his system. And Clelin Ferrell has the ability to start opposite of Nick Bosa. It's probably not what a lot of people would like, because Ferrell is not exactly a name that everyone gets excited about when they talk about defensive edge rushers in this league. But he could be. Playing it with these other three players, and especially Bosa and Hargrave, are going to give him the opportunity to have those one-on-one matchups. Yeah, he played opposite of Max Crosby, and Crosby's a great pass rusher. That's awesome. But the rest of the defensive line can't sniff how good this 49ers defensive line is. They're just on another level, meaning he's going to have way more opportunities. I went back and watched some Clelin Ferrell from the 2022 season, and I must admit, I liked his technique. I thought he had good hands. He was willing to really do a lot of work getting the offensive lineman's hands off of him and creating space for him to be able to operate. I also thought he was very good at setting the edge against the run. I had no worries about him on first and second down being able to squeeze it down and make those plays, yet keep that outside arm free to be able to make plays if a guy bounced it out. Clelin Ferrell is a really solid base 4-3 defensive end in the league. The question is, how good is he going to be on third down rushing the passer? Where Drake Jackson's someone with those elite ability and elite traits to be able to get to the quarterback, Ferrell doesn't have those elite traits. He has a very good motor, very consistent technique, and if with a little improvement from Chris Kasarik and he can get off the ball a little bit quicker, him and Drake Jackson both need to get off the ball a little bit quicker. If they can do that, they might have an opportunity to do more damage rushing the passer. So when it comes to these two guys, they both have certain strengths that kind of contradict the other. Where Clelin Ferrell's really good at setting the edge and good against the run, Drake Jackson's not as good yet. Could he come in this year and be better? Absolutely. Where Drake Jackson has those traits to be able to bend the corner and get to the quarterback, and Clelin Ferrell doesn't have the same level of physical ability. It's one of those interesting things where Drake has that athletic ability to do all the things you want him to do coming off the edge and being able to get to the quarterback, while Ferrell is more of the base 4-3 guy. So could we see a combination? That could be the case as well. Ferrell could play on early downs, Drake Jackson come in to rush the passer, and then next thing you know, you've got potentially the perfect defensive end. But I think the 49ers are expecting both of these guys to be able to be 3-down defensive ends for their defense. For the mere fact you have to come up with snaps. We talked about the fact Ebukam's gone, Amenahu's gone, Jordan Willis is gone. You have to replace those snaps with players that can get those reps. We don't know what Robert Beal is going to be. We know Kerry Hyder's consistent, but what's Austin Bryant going to be for the 49ers? So I think there's a lot of questions about this competition between these two guys, and it's definitely not very cookie cutter. One has tremendous upside. The other, you look at him like he's a veteran in this league and he's been around, but really Ferrell's still a young guy. He's still got a lot of meat left on the bone. So I'm super excited to see these two guys compete against each other. I think it's an opportunity for the 49ers not only to push these guys to be the best that they could be, but also push this defensive line to be at the next level. Because if Drake Jackson could come into training camp and be able to set the edge against the run and then still have enough to be that whole shot, bend the corner guy in obvious third downs, and then Ferrell can get better rushing the passer in obvious third downs, you could have two very capable defensive ends that could play not only opposite of Bosa, but as part of rotation. Now, all of a sudden, one starts, the second one comes in with a Bravo group that potentially has a guy like Robert Beal or Austin Bryant or Kerry Hyder, and you've got a very formidable 49ers defensive end spot. This is exactly what Ferrell wants. Ferrell needs to do very well for the 49ers. He's going to be highly motivated to be an impact player because he knows not only is this his opportunity to show the league who he actually is, it's also his opportunity to get paid. If you don't succeed playing for Chris Kasarik, you're probably not going to have an opportunity to go out there and get a lot of money on the open market. So success is the only way Clelin Ferrell can do it. I made a video breaking down Ferrell where I talked about this is his time to shine, and it absolutely is. So who's it going to be? Drake Jackson, Clelin Ferrell. I want you guys to let me know in the comment section down below who you guys think it's going to be. I think it's going to play out on the field. I think Drake Jackson's going to get the first opportunity. And like I said, if he can set the edge, I think Drake Jackson will be the guy. If Drake Jackson struggles setting the edge against the run, then it's going to be Clelin Ferrell. I think the 49ers will be very happy going out there with a defensive end that's very consistent opposite of Nick Bosa, and then try to work Drake Jackson in as the season goes on. But very hopeful it's going to be Drake, but I think Clelin Ferrell's going to make this thing close, and it's going to be razor thin to see who starts. It could be as simple as, depending on who you play, which offensive tackle you're going against, determines who's going to actually start on game day. So thank you guys so much for watching the episode. I had a lot of fun talking about this competition that's going to be happening at training camp. Lots more competitions are going to be happening as well. Come back to the channel, check them out. You can go to the playlist. All the training camp battles are listed in there. Go check those out. If you want extra content, head over to the Ant Hill Show over on Patreon or Slightly Offsides. And of course, now you can find the 49ers Cutback on Believe, still available on all audio platforms, Spotify, everything, but 49ers Cutback is now on Believe. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Until then, stay safe and remember the right way is always the 49ers way.